In Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage Season 2, Episode 10, the show quietly but firmly makes a bold statement about Mandy's priorities, and it isn't flattering. For the first time this season, Mandy's job doesn't just feel important to her. It feels like something she's using as a shield, even when it comes at the expense of her marriage. Episode 10 doesn't portray Mandy as evil or malicious, but it does make one thing clear. She's being selfish, and she doesn't want to admit it. What makes this episode so effective is that Mandy's behavior is understandable on the surface. She worked hard to get where she is. She wants independence. She wants respect. And after becoming a wife and a mother at a young age, her career represents control over her own identity. Those motivations are valid. The problem isn't that Mandy values her job, it's that she treats it as more important than the people who are supposed to come first. Throughout Episode 10, Mandy repeatedly prioritizes work decisions without fully considering how they affect Georgie. She doesn't consult him. She doesn't compromise. She informs him. That distinction matters. Marriage isn't about permission, but it is about partnership, and Mandy increasingly behaves like she's operating solo while expecting Georgie to simply adjust. Georgie, for all his flaws, is clearly trying. He's working, showing up, and taking responsibility in ways Season 1 Georgie never would have. Yet when he raises concerns about Mandy's job choices, they're brushed aside as insecurity or immaturity. Mandy frames the issue as Georgie not supporting her, when in reality, he's asking to be included in decisions that directly impact their family. That's where the selfishness comes in. Support doesn't mean silence. It doesn't mean blind agreement. Mandy treats her ambition as non-negotiable while expecting Georgie's life to remain flexible around it. When conflicts arise, she defaults to the idea that her job is essential and Georgie's concerns are optional. The show doesn't say this outright. It shows it through her tone, her timing, and her unwillingness to slow down long enough to listen. Episode 10 also highlights how Mandy uses responsibility as justification. She frames her job as something she's doing for the family, but the way she handles it suggests it's more about personal validation than shared stability. If it were truly about the family, she would involve Georgie in the decision-making process instead of treating him like an obstacle to her progress. What makes this especially frustrating is that Mandy expects emotional labor from Georgie while offering very little in return. She wants him to be patient, understanding, and adaptable, but she doesn't extend that same grace back to him. When Georgie struggles, he's told to grow up. When Mandy struggles, she's defended as a woman chasing her dreams. The imbalance is impossible to ignore. The episode also contrasts Mandy's behavior with other adults in her life, particularly Audrey. Ironically, while Audrey is often controlling and overbearing, Mandy is starting to mirror some of those same traits. She assumes she knows best. She dismisses opposing viewpoints. She frames disagreement as disrespect. The difference is that Mandy believes she's being progressive and independent, which makes her blind to how dismissive she's becoming. Georgie's frustration in Episode 10 isn't about jealousy or insecurity. It's about feeling irrelevant in his own marriage. He's reacting to being sidelined, not threatened. And the show does a good job of making that distinction clear. Georgie doesn't ask Mandy to quit her job. He asks her to consider the cost of always choosing it first. Mandy's refusal to do that reveals her biggest flaw this season. She equates compromise with weakness. Any suggestion that she should slow down or rethink a work decision feels like an attack on her identity. Instead of seeing Georgie as a partner raising valid concerns, she sees him as someone trying to hold her back, even when he's doing nothing of the sort. Episode 10 also subtly suggests that Mandy enjoys the control her job gives her. At work, she's competent, respected, and confident. At home, she has to negotiate, compromise, and share power. When given the choice, she repeatedly chooses the environment where she feels dominant. That choice doesn't make her a villain, but it does make her selfish in this moment of the story. The tragedy is that Mandy doesn't realize she's creating the very instability she fears. By refusing to engage Georgie as an equal, she weakens the foundation of their marriage. Independence doesn't mean isolation, and ambition doesn't excuse emotional neglect. Episode 10 makes it clear that Mandy's job isn't the problem, her unwillingness to balance it with empathy is. This storyline also reflects the show's growing maturity. Georgie and Mandy's first marriage isn't interested in easy villains or perfect heroes. Mandy isn't wrong for wanting a career, and Georgie isn't wrong for wanting a voice. The conflict exists because Mandy refuses to acknowledge that both things can be true at the same time. By the end of episode 10, Mandy hasn't learned her lesson, and that's intentional. The show isn't resolving this conflict neatly because real marriages don't work that way. Instead, it plants a warning sign. If Mandy continues to treat her job as untouchable and Georgie as optional, the cracks in their relationship will deepen. Season 2, Episode 10 doesn't ask viewers to hate Mandy. It asks them to see her clearly. Right now, she's choosing herself first and calling it strength. Whether she grows from that or doubles down on it will define not just her arc, but the future of her marriage. And that's what makes this episode quietly powerful. It doesn't shout that Mandy is being selfish. It lets her actions say it for her.